Welcome back to Transfer Talk presented by BIT, the weekly show keeping you up to date with all the goings on in the world of transfers. Let's start the rumour mill today with Zaniolo potentially leaving Roma. He's got his choice of clubs with Newcastle, Spurs and AC Milan all interested, but there are two main factors at play here. The first is that Roma are not interested in any loan deals, even if they involve an option or obligation to buy at the end of the season. They want the full payment of between 35 to 40 million euros. Now, this rules out the two loan plus option to buy offers that Spurs and Newcastle have already made. The second factor is that Zaniolo reportedly wants to stay in Italy, but AC Milan aren't quite in the position to pay so much money like the Premier League clubs are. So at the moment, everything is at a bit of a standoff. This deal, though, not only affects the player and his club, but potentially other players moving too. One of them is Hakim Ziyech. The Chelsea attacker has been playing recently due to injuries, but with new signings galore, including Madueke and Mudryk, it seems only a matter of time before Ziyech is back struggling for minutes again. So, is a move to Roma a good idea? Well, given the open spot that Zaniolo could be leaving on the right-hand side of Roma's attack, that's not a bad start. And given how Mourinho's team utilised a left-footed player cutting in on the right-hand side, that's an even better reason for the former Ajax man to head to Serie A. Talking of exciting wingers, though, and the latest transfer drama in the Premier League comes from a deal that Spurs could be making in hijacking Everton's move for Arnaut Danjuma at the very last. The Villarreal forward has gone to Goodison Park over the weekend. He's done some media bits, he's completed the medical and agreed to terms, only to have his head turned at the final moment by Spurs. As of Tuesday evening, the former Bournemouth man was heading to London to go through everything all over again with Antonio Conte's side ahead of a 6-month loan. The next rumour comes courtesy of a potential outgoing from Juventus, and as the agent of forward Dusan Vlahovic said before the window, don't rule anything out. Now, we're a few weeks in and nothing has quite come to fruition yet, but it seems both Arsenal and Manchester United could be reigniting interest that they held 1 year ago whilst the Serbian was at Fiorentina before he made the £60 million move to Juve. 12 months on, and with Vlahovic not necessarily impressing as hoped, Juve would find it tough to recoup that money and then some. But if United are desperate for a striker to lead their new young and hungry front line, Vlahovic has all the tools and could excel under Ten Hag. Despite the fact United have just signed Wout Weghorst, a 6-month loan is of course just that, a short-term fix to a problem that needs a long-term solution. And finally, a team looking so far into the future with their plans that they are handing out 7- and 8-year deals, it's Chelsea. And what would a transfer video be in January without talking about the Blues, who have spent a huge amount of money already and are looking to continue to do so with 19-year-old Malo Gusto. The Lyon defender has been putting in some brilliant performances in Liga and could be both a replacement for Cesar Azpilicueta and provide competition to Reece James moving forward. The latest reports are that he has in fact agreed personal terms on a 6.5-year deal, but the clubs are yet to reach an agreement, with Lyon holding out for around 40 million euros. Let's be honest though, that's merely a drop in the ocean of Chelsea's overall transfer budget, so I can see this one eventually going through. With that said and done though, let's move on to our done deals of the week. Right then, on to the done deals of the week, and there have been some big movers in the past 7 days, starting with Josip Juranovic, one of Croatia's stars of their World Cup, who now finds himself in the Bundesliga with Union Berlin after a £7.5 million move from Celtic. The fee for the 27-year-old is actually the joint highest the club have ever paid for a transfer, on par with the amount they gave to Liverpool for Taiwo Awoniyi. The right-back was linked with a few Premier League sides, but the options were mainly for him to be a backup, where, as with Union Berlin, he'll be a starting replacement for Julian Ryerson, who headed to Dortmund to cover for the injured Thomas Meunier. Next up, and of course, no transfer window is complete without Premier League clubs spending a bit of money. And as interleague transfers go in England, 15 million isn't actually such a huge sum, and it's the amount that West Ham have paid Aston Villa to bring in Danny Ings. With David Moyes' side definitely involved in a relegation battle as we head into the back end of the season, goals will be crucial in keeping them up. So bring in a striker capable of finding the back of the net with 68 Premier League goals to his name so far, it seems like a good piece of business, if you overlook the fact that he got injured on his debut. With other strikers like Scamacca failing to live up to the billing in terms of goal output, like many other forwards West Ham have signed before, this Ings transfer has to go right for them. Before we move on, though, to another Premier League team who have actually managed to capture 2 players this week, we'll jump to La Liga, where Memphis Depay has followed a path pretty worn by departing Barcelona players in recent years. The Dutchman moves to Atletico Madrid, just like Antoine Griezmann and Luis Suarez have done before him, and he'll be hoping to emulate their success in front of goal. After just 18 months at Barcelona, it's fair to say it was a smart move for Depay to leave. Having seen so little La Liga action this season especially, it's not surprising given that the summer signing of Robert Lewandowski cannot stop scoring. Regardless of the lack of game time or poor form though, signing a top-quality 28-year-old Dutch international for just over €3 million is an absolute steal. Even if he barely scores, it's practically a risk-free move from a financial perspective. So, moving back to the Premier League, and the first of 2 signings from Arsenal, and they've moved to bring in a centre-back for the future in Jakub Kiwior. The Polish centre-half has put pen to paper on a 4.5-year deal after the Gunners agreed to pay £21 million to Spezia in Serie A. But whilst Kiwior is definitely one for the future, another signing ready to make an impact at the club is Leandro Trossard, who joins from fellow Premier League side Brighton, where it sounds as if the Belgian and new boss Roberto De Zerbi didn't exactly have the best of relationships. Still, getting £27 million for a player with just 18 months left on his contract isn't such a terrible deal for them, and if you look at the results and performances since he was dropped from the Brighton team, they'll be just fine without him. But Arsenal can definitely also make use of his attributes, and he brings them to the team in more than one way. The versatile forward can fill a number of positions on the pitch and bring quality to the attack, while simultaneously allowing members of the starting 11 a rest when the fixture list starts to pile up towards the end of the season. So with that being said, let's take a look at how the Belgian forward can help the Gunners in more ways than one, as he is our game breaker of the week. So Leandro Trossard is our game breaker of the week, and here is where he can fit in at Arsenal. Now, I've got him instead of Gabriel Martinelli on the left-hand side of the minute. What he brings is exceptional end product and ability in and around the box, and it's something that most sides would absolutely love to have. Oh, and he knows how to press too. It's a key thing in Mikel Arteta's side. At the minute, when he came from Brighton there, he was the top of the list when it came to goals, expected goals, touches in the opposition box, open play chances created, and possession won in the final third. This makes him brilliant for this sort of area. It also means that he can link up with the rest of the Arsenal attack. That is something that Bukayo Saka does exceptionally well. When receiving the ball, he's got Eddie Nketiah inside him, and he's also got Martin Odegaard running from deep too. Trossard's ability to link up with Nketiah, link up with the midfield, or take the ball down the line is going to be so key for Arsenal. But on top of all of this, it's his positional play that's really going to help them too, because Arsenal don't necessarily play a lot of vertical passes. You won't find Trossard drifting into the middle so much, especially when he's playing as a left winger. That is the space that Martin Odegaard normally takes over. So why do we look at how Trossard would fit into that role as a number 10 instead of Martin Odegaard? Like I mentioned, a lot of the fact the rest of the season is going to be so busy was the reason behind why Trossard was signed in the first place. So Trossard as the number 10. Would we see him in the role that Martin Odegaard was in? Not necessarily. He will find himself a little bit further forward in this role here. It's slightly different to how Arsenal normally play, but it is another weapon, well, in their arsenal. Where Odegaard normally takes the ball forward with his feet, Trossard has proven himself to be excellent in and around the striker. We saw it earlier this season with a fantastic hat-trick that he scored at Anfield. He was moving in and around Danny Welbeck, and the second goal especially saw Welbeck move out to the left-hand side, and Trossard was there moving into the box, managed to grab his second of 3 on the afternoon. It is this area which is so key for Arsenal, whether players dribble into that space or whether it's left open for someone to arrive late and find a shot from the edge of the box. It's such a key way that Arsenal play. We've seen the likes of Saka, Thomas Partey and Martin Odegaard this season score from the edge of the box. And with Trossard's skills, you'll find that he is probably going to end up in that position too and able to find the back of the net. But lastly, what about if Trossard were to move up front by himself instead of Eddie Nketiah? Well, this one is slightly different because this, unlike the other two, would really alter how Arsenal play their game. The reason being is that Eddie Nketiah, as so often we've seen this season, finds himself inside the box. This area is prime Nketiah. We saw it against Manchester United. 2 goals from 6 or so yards out. Now, whilst we've seen Trossard score from there this season, like I mentioned, the hat-trick at Anfield all came within 8 or so yards out. Trossard is a little bit better at dropping in deep. Like I mentioned before, this role doesn't necessarily suit how Arsenal play at the minute. They will have to change things, and it's good to have an option off the bench, but without a real focus and a real player in the middle of the box, it may make things a little bit more difficult for Mikel Arteta's side. Anyway, these are the options in which Trossard could play as Arsenal head into a busy end of the season where the fixtures will pile up. Not only can he provide a pretty quality player for the starting 11, but he allows some of their star men a rest as well. And that is why Leandro Trossard is our game breaker of the week. So that's it for another episode of the Transfer Talk sponsored by Bit. We will be back next week looking yet again at more done deals of the week and, of course, our game breaker too. So see you then.